Everybody, St. Paul here. Welcome to episode 45 of Music on the Run. Today's guest, my best friend on the planet, Joey Finger. He's next on Music on the Run. Hey everybody, St. Paul Peterson here, and welcome to episode 45 of Music on the Run. Man, I can't believe we made it to episode 45, and this is going to be our first live interview since the start of the pandemic, so I'm excited about that. We are in the Peterson family basement, as you can see. Man, we've had over 60 years of rehearsals and music in this place, so I'm looking forward to having my next guest here. Before we get to him, I'm continuing with the gratitude segment. I want to highlight a couple of the Music on the Run patrons. And you're going, what is a patron? Our patrons financially help us put on this podcast, and they get some goodies in return. If you'd like to help us continue to put on this podcast, please go to www.patreon.com/Music on the Run podcast. And today I want to do a big shout out to our $10 a month patrons. My geezer of gear running brother, Bill Nolan. Thank you so much for your continued patronage. And of course, Audrey Johnson. Thank you, Audrey. You might have been our first patron ever. You'll have to confirm that for me, but thank you so much. All right, time to get to our guest. My guest today is a total chameleon. He's a drummer, a producer, a songwriter, a tour manager, a creative and musical director. He does it all. He's played or recorded with the Osmonds, Brian White, Boz Scaggs, David Sanborn, to name a few. He happens to be my best friend on planet Earth. Please welcome Joey Finger. Hi, brother man.
Hello. How are you, brother?
Good. I'm so glad that you're here. We've got our handheld mics. We are in person. We are talking. We are vaccinated. We are here. Thank you.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Man, are you kidding me? It took me only 45 episodes to get you on this podcast, but being fair to me, you just moved back to Minneapolis, didn't you?
I did, and I'm really happy to say it's much more enjoyable in the summer here than Las Vegas.
What is it, about 120 in Vegas right now?
You can die going to your mailbox.
So this kind of worked out interestingly enough. You moved here with your family, but for the last year and a half, tell me what's been going on in your life.
Las Vegas was really hit hard.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it. I mean, any place that's engineered for large groups of people is going to take a bigger hit than, a regular community. A lot of people basically watched COVID happen on TV, and it didn't affect them so much as all of a sudden there's just no shows. There's nothing for us to go do other than what we can generate from our own homes with our friends, and a lot of the stuff we did together was like
the Funk Fridays,
soul saving.
Right.
I mean, it was like, oh, good, I get to express myself musically. I mean, thank you, for everybody that just wouldn't give up. It really tested people to see what it was that they were passionate about, and I was one of the lucky ones. I had a place to practice and a place to play and record, and so I feel grateful about that. But it's been interesting trying to make things happen in this environment. So,
right. So you were out there for the entire pandemic, then you moved home with your family. What's it like to be home?
Man, home is one of those words that gets abused, and this is real home. People think that a home is just someplace where you park your car. It's where it's where your heart is. It's where you park your heart. I mean, I honestly, when I got here, I knew I would be, a little bit more involved because I had close people that weren't necessarily, as concerned, because a family bridge, they're willing to take a little bit more risk to spend time together and say, hey, if you guys are safe and we'll be able to hang in small groups. And that really, really, that made a difference coming here. And all of a sudden we were able to kind of feel like we were more involved. But it is a great feeling to be here, and a great feeling just to be, feel more alive.
Well, you moved away 20 years ago?
1996.
Ooh, 25 years ago. How's my math doing today? You've been to quite a few different places. L.A.,
Los Angeles, Nashville, back to L.A. I did a little short run in Aspen, Colorado.
Oh, that's right. I almost forgot about that.
I'm an avid skier. I really like to ski, and I got my instructor certificate, so I spent a lot of time just wanting to have that life. And there was a duality about it. It was really quite fun. Get up early and meet a cast of characters to go and teach them how to ski, and then go back home and take a little shut-eye, and then go to the club and play jazz all night. I played in a club out there that was strictly a jazz club, but just a 5-star restaurant. So it was quite fun. So.
Well, I can't wait to talk about your entire journey. I mean, you've played with so many different people, but I think I'd like to focus in on your career and what makes your career. What has made your career from the time you moved until we're sitting here when you're back home? And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I think it's important for our listeners and viewers to know our history. You and I go back probably to this basement from when we were under 10 years old. We weren't necessarily hanging back then, but give the scenario of how we know each other.
My brother brought me over here, and I think it was, we walked in here and there was a drum set right about a little bit more to the left and facing the other way. And there was a band rehearsing down here, and, your sister Patty, your brother Ricky were playing in the band. And I walked in, and Ricky's like, oh, you just missed Paul. And I'm like, okay, I'd love to meet him, and just little kid. So he's like, I kind of started looking around, and I spotted your skateboard over there. So I spent a bunch of time out here riding up and down the hill on your skateboard before I met you. But sorry about that. I don't think I broke anything. But
no, but I could tell someone used it.
Well, you were off playing baseball somewhere, and so we had a near miss in this basement. And then eventually I was able to, say hello to you and say, hey, I'm John's brother, my brother John. Great guitar player, singer, worked with all different kinds of people in Minneapolis, and fortunate enough to get me involved with you and your family. I mean, he's really the link that created this whole thing for me.
Right. Wow. So. I remember more so when we were young adults and we got reintroduced. You had been working around town playing drums with different people. Like, I remember the band Kleenex.
Hi, I'm Joe Finger. I play in Kleenex. Kill me now.
What a terrible name for a band. I'm just saying. You played with
wait, now let's make sure. Clean, okay, it's just real witty here. CLEAN with a X, like X-rated.
Ooh,
wow.
You are such a
like Led Zeppelin.
naughty boy.
Iron Butterfly. Clean X.
Yeah, maybe
Didn't
not.
Quite.
Anyways, you moved on from that. You played with Doug Maynard, who's a Minneapolis legend. Greg McNeely's band.
Crossover? Yeah.
Did you play with Crossover as well?
I did. I was in Crossover for a long time. Back in the Jazz Fusion days.
That was great. Well, yeah, but just renamed now Smooth Jazz.
Smooth Jazz.
That's right.
It should be not so smooth jazz as far as I'm concerned, because back then we were trying to really keep it from, the whole smile while you play thing. We were actually digging in. But what a great era that was. I mean, you shared in a lot of that,
With Samoa, with my brother's band, Samoa. Yeah, that was really fun for me. Well, so that's when you and I kind of got reacquainted, and then the bond between us was like brothers from another mother. Immediately, and you and I would do things like, we play. We weren't necessarily in a lot of bands together. Although
Not
my
at
memory
first.
is
At first, it was like I would come see you, you would come see me,
Right.
and then we would disappear and be regular people on that scale on a racquetball court, if I don't if I remember properly.
So we would, so that's part of our journey. Since this is Music on the Run, that's something that we would do. We were workout buddies for
Yeah, absolutely.
probably a lot of our lives, and you've always egged me on, come on, and then I do the same for you.
I think I bothered you more than egged you on.
I don't know.
Just like little competition, just a little bit.
Oh, you and I were brothers in every aspect.
It's
Come
like-
on. And then I just, I wouldn't play things for a long time, and I'd go and we played racquetball, and I have the world's longest arms. If you are now watching this, I think I have a wingspan of about 37 feet, and it really pissed you off when I would be able to get every shot on the racquetball court.
The normal human being takes 4 or 5 or 6 steps to cross the court. Paul takes 2.
Thank you. That's very, very
It's
true.
like a giant stride, if you will. And then the arm happens to help a lot too. So I was aggravated. I think I smashed a couple of rackets. I'm pretty sure I needed a sponsorship at that point in racquetball rackets.
Well, you and I spent a lot of time in this house as well. This, for those of you who don't know, this house that I'm in was my mother and father's house that Julie, my wife, and I purchased when Mom died. And we needed to keep the funk rolling in the basement. But Mom's got a pool outside. She put that in 1981. You and I would come here. We'd have family hangs. We would drink a lot of Heinekens in those days. And I have shots of us with big hair.
I kind of think we need to go back there.
I can't. I look like Eddie Munster more and more every single day of my life.
I don't know, the big hair. It's like,
There are wigs, though.
there.
Can you see me with a wig? I'm on a big blonde David Lee Roth wig.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. The hair thing was just so much fun. I mean, you'd get ready and say, oh, yeah. You could feel yourself in that filming moment in your own little bathroom just going,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
little spray.
Oh.
And I had so many more products back then.
I know.
Right?
And so much more hair to do.
Yeah. And then now it's just like, and I'm here,
The convenience factor.
There you go.
Just because you and I have to leave for a golfing trip in about 45 minutes.
So
I'm
disappointed
going to get into the bulk of this interview, which is fascinating to me. I watched, of course, your career my entire life with, so much interest because we are brothers, and also because you're incredibly talented, and it just astounds me at all the different things you're talented at. You never must get bored because you do so many different things. So walk us through your first departure here from Minneapolis 25 years ago in 1996. You went to L.A. Is that correct? That's the first place?
That's correct.
All right. So Did you have a gig lined up, or did you go, God, I hope this is going to turn into something? What was that all about?
I was playing in Minneapolis, and I had made my rounds with what would be called at that time the best bands in town. I was really fortunate. Ended up on stage with just some of the greatest players. Rob Arthur from the Peter Frampton Band, David Barry from currently in The Voice, and formerly with Janet Jackson and Cher and people like that. And just to name a couple, the horn sections, all the people that were so just unbelievably great. I was playing, and I had what I figured kind of topped out on the local scene. Prince was doing a lot of work in town, and some of us had little exposure. Some made great leaps and bounds with his camp. And I had gotten to the part where I thought, I'm stagnating. I'm not growing as a player. I want to see other places. I want to experience other markets. So just coincidentally, a dear friend of ours, Jamie Ches, rest his soul, he called me and he said, man, buddy, I got a opening spot for Dave Matthews Band with a band called Boxing Gandhis. And
okay, that's better than Kleenex.
That's better than Kleenex. So he said, I have some local work here in LA that I have to sub out. And I know you've been talking about checking things out here. You can come, you can stay at my place. You can, and I'll just put you on these gigs. And I'm like, well, that's pretty much ideal from just a sampling, you know? So I went back to the Stud Brothers that I was playing, Mick Sterling and the Stud Brothers, and I said, look, I'm really curious about this. I mean, where's it at? Where are we at? Where's everything at? And I had done a couple of records with them. And it was really interesting how it became obvious that it was time for me to move and check this out, because the opportunity for Mick to work with some other people looked good to him. And he said, look, let's just do this. Let's just make this, change. And if it, you want to come back, I mean, let me know at that time. But don't go out there on a half of an idea. And I respect him so much for that conversation. And it put me in that I got to make this work category. You know what I mean? I wasn't necessarily fired or I didn't necessarily, leave on bad terms. It was like, I'm really thinking it's a transitional time. So went out to LA with that attitude. And of course, Jamie says, all right, well, here's the place. It's it's just 1 bedroom, and just take good care of it. And I'll be back in, 6 weeks and we'll talk. They went out and they did 3 dates on the tour and they got canned.
Oh, baby.
So, I mean, I had like this mini calendar of stuff. And I'm like, he comes back and goes, yeah, man. So, can I have my bed back and my gigs back? And I'm like, okay. Yeah. So that was like a major boot. Yeah. And we made that work because we were such good friends, you know?
Yeah.
So, but I had already seen what I needed to see. The funny part is people like our buddy Bob Vandell, the drummer here in town, he was like, oh, so you're thinking about leaving town? Here, let me help you out. Let me help you pack. He said he got me a gig out there the day I arrived, and I really appreciated that too. But I had instantly started playing with guys that were in the Tonight Show band. Oh, wow. Derek Murdoch, a guy named Joel Gaines from that played with the Platters and the OJs and bands like that. And
so people were vouching for you at this point.
It was amazing. I mean, it was a gift in many ways. And I obviously went out there with something different because it went over. I didn't sound like LA drummers. I sounded like a Minneapolis guy, and Minneapolis was on fire at that time. So to come out and be funky and be able to play with that kind of a feel and have that stuff and keep it clean and not cluttered up, and time was such a Minneapolis, like you know a cat from Minneapolis when you hear him play. Time is first, it just was in our cereal, I mean,
I love that.
So,
right.
That's basically what started me out there and got me going. I mean, I started working there was a band called the Blade Company, and that was one of the true funky bands. Them and the Polyester Players were the true.
That might be worse than the band. The Polyester Players.
Let me tell
Why
you
do
something,
they say
man.
that?
You get out there and see and if you were fortunate enough to see either one of those bands, that was LA's finest, and it really it spoke funk, and they got it. They got it. So, but
so you're out there. You're a young guy. You've got some gigs that are coming in. You're having to move out. You got your own place. I take it that Jamie gave you the boot out of there.
We lived together. We just kind of
you lived together. You found
a
place.
I ended up on the floor. And that's my hard luck, LA story. So it's like, okay, I paid my dues.
Though, because
I paid my dues. I slept on the floor. I was starving. I was playing for food at one gig at Genghis Cohen.
Great place to play for food, by the way.
Really good.
Yeah.
But it was a jazz gig.
Wow.
I got to play jazz. It was fun. So
you were a struggling musician making your way by connections, by your playing. The calls started coming in. Would you think, How would you describe, I guess, the life of a musician who has just moved to LA? I mean, I don't think that there's any difference between 25 years ago and today, because I have a lot of students who watch this too, and they're like, I think they'll be fascinated by that part of the journey. What's got to be inside of you to be able to handle sleeping on the floor and waiting for the phone to ring, and maybe it's not waiting, maybe it's you being proactive. Tell me a little bit about how you fought for your career out there.
I think the truth in any situation is you can make something look so bad in your mind's eye, and then when you get there, I mean, if I told you you need to go out and sleep on a floor somewhere and starve, to make it, you're going to make this horrifying picture in your mind. And I was there, and I was laughing and having a riot. I mean, the responsibility list was low. It was just be seen, be the best you can be, and don't stress. I mean, when you have nothing to lose, you know?
Good
so
word.
all I had was a drum set and a truck, and that's all I needed, you know?
And a floor.
Well, the floor.
And a floor.
It was a good one. But, it got a little difficult, coming when Jamie would come back after a night at the club and have met somebody.
Oh, interesting.
There were long walks. Lonely, long walks.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Here's something else I want to bring up. Now, you were a musician out there, but in those early days, did you have any side gigs? Were you doing anything else besides music to make ends meet?
Nope, I was focused. I was completely focused on it. I didn't dive into the things that I had learned how to do here as a secondary income, which would be, working on homes or,
right.
Building things with my hands and,
And you were not lucky, you were good at real estate from an early age.
My family exposed me to it. Yeah. There's, I had 5 sisters and 2 brothers, big family like you.
Right.
So it was kind of an introduction. It's like, hey, Joey, you want to learn how to do this? It's like, no. Well, you're going to need to know how. So I'll teach you how to do this. I was cheap labor. And finally, my brother-in-law allowed me to make a little money at it. And that was great. But I realized in doing that I didn't know that it would come and help me later. I realized it was allowing me to continue to develop, But I didn't have an opportunity or honestly didn't want to waste my time in LA trying to be something other than the reason I was there. I had to touch that thing. There's that burning voice or that idea that won't go away until you put your hand on it. So do yourself a favor and just do everything you can until you touch it so you can start to think clearly again.
Did you have money saved up before you went out there, so you had a little padding, or?
I had some money. I had actually bought a house here, and so when I left, I had some renters that were paying the rent there. So I lowered my expectations as far as like how much money I had going out. I didn't have any payments. I didn't have any payments of any kind. I bought a truck that I could pay for. I didn't have a house payment. Jamie was letting me live there for nothing. So really, honestly, I had saved up a little bit of money, but I really never really had to touch it because I was able to work enough to continue to
buy Heineken.
Yeah. Well, actually, that was part of the deal.
That was part of the game.
My first session in L.A., I got a call from Chris Abraham. You remember Chris?
I do.
Okay. Yeah. Chris called me up and he said, look, hey, we don't have any money. And that was like the first. That's
the opening line.
Yeah, that's the hello, hi, what's your name in L.A. So. But
you said yes.
I was sitting basically on the couch and doing nothing. I had my drum set, and so I went over there for Heineken and pizza, and tracked some songs, and went extremely well. Creative juices were really high in that environment, and almost got bit by a pit bull, but that was actually generated some quite some energy.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's like, okay, sorry. Am I at the wrong place?
Ooh. So you're in LA. You are establishing yourself. When was it that you got your first break? What would you consider your first break into the upper echelon of the music business?
Playing with great people out there, you always felt like you were right on the verge. I would get, opportunities. There was a little bit of a scene out there. It was a name dropping thing, and it was like people that wanted the gig would do what they had to. There was espionage. It's like trying to keep you from going anywhere. Right. But honestly, you're very, very responsible for what I would consider my first big break. You called me from Nashville.
Yeah, I want you to tell the story because this is, I want to hear your perspective on this.
Well, it was very hot. It was one sunny, hot day in the valley.
Northridge, California.
Yeah, and how much detail do you want? I was standing there in my underwear.
I would say 5 minutes or less. Maybe leave
I was
the
putting
underwear part
together a computer desk in the valley, some assembly required, and I was on day 2. And so I got a call from our host today, Mr. Paul Peterson, and yourself. And what are you doing right now was the opening line. I said, well, I'm just putting together this desk. What's going on? He goes, have you ever heard of a guy named Brian White? I said, nope. I have no idea who that is. Well, he's pretty major country star. I'm in Nashville. I've been out here writing with him, and they're having trouble finding the right chemistry, the right drummer for this tour. They're going out with Leanne Rimes, and it's like a co-headline. He's a big deal. He's got 6 number ones, and I remember the conversation well. And I said, well, what's the deal? And he goes, well, can you get to Nashville like tomorrow or maybe even tonight? And I went, and I was standing there. It was so hot I was in my underwear. Ew. But, I kind of just went, I looked at myself in the mirror and I went, am I ready to go try out for a band in Nashville right now? I said, well, let me see what I can do. And so I had a girlfriend at the time, and she goes, oh, I love that guy. He sounds great. I'll go run and get his records. So she ran to Target. I called somebody I knew from American Airlines and got on a red eye. And I literally had not heard the material. I listened to it on the plane and landed at about 6 o'clock.
And you're not necessarily a country drummer.
Not at all. Okay. I had never been in a country band in my life. I mean, so that qualifies as not a country drummer. But the irony of it all is, after all is said and done, they weren't looking for a country drummer.
Right.
They had gone through every country drummer in Nashville, and that was the problem. And nobody really knew that in this situation at this time in the situation. So I landed at about 6 o'clock in the morning, and you were staying there with a friend of ours, Rick Barron, who concurred.
I had to mention him for sure because he's a big part of the story.
Huge part of my life.
He and I were just sitting together, and we're like two proud parents calling their little kid
it's
to
like,
come out.
hey, do you think he's ready? You guys kind of teamed up on that for sure. Rick's a big part of this opportunity as well, and you guys both told Brian, I'm aware of that. This guy could be your guy. So
and Brian was a big Prince fan, and I met him years earlier because he was an up and coming country artist.
Correct.
And he, we became friends then. I would go visit him on the road. I'd go stay at his house. That's how we got to this point. So continue.
Right. So I got in at 6 in the morning, took a cab, and you guys had been staying at a hotel somewhere on Old Hickory Road in Franklin. And I got out of the cab, and I remember thinking, oh, God, I'm glad I don't have to see anybody. I felt like death warmed over, And I was sporting a goatee and a mustache, and I had a leather jacket on. I'm walking around, and I'm like, this isn't really Nashville. I might have to change my appearance before I meet the artist. And you guys rolled up in Brian's car, and I met Brian. I met the musical director, Derek. You, Rick, you guys were going golfing and had an early tea time. And I'm like looking at him, hey, that's the guy that's going to try out for your band. I just kind of went, how you doing? And it was like, all right, well, there goes that.
I didn't quite mention that part when we were on the way to pick you up, did I? Yeah.
Anyways, so I, luckily for me, I was able to get a couple hours sleep, and then the audition was like at 10 o'clock or something. So listen to the stuff a couple more times, show up, and man, that was the funniest audition I've ever been to in my life. And the first thing Brian does is say to me, look, we're really sorry, but we thought we had sound check, this huge facility and full staging. I mean, sound stages, 6 of them, I think they got in there for lighting, trussing, everything for the audition, but we didn't. We have this rigged in my garage down here, and they didn't even have a mic stand.
They were hanging mics from the ceiling like this. Yeah, totally. I
Brian
remember
was singing into that, and I was playing on a drum set in the garage. And man, I sat down. I said, I don't care. This is actually making me more comfortable. And so he was great. I warmed up a little bit. You guys were talking out there, and I'm like, there's just no way this is going to happen because I've only really listened to this stuff. I haven't had a chance to really play it.
Right.
So I thought, okay, whatever. So the garage door goes down, and it's like, all right. So, and all of a sudden, the guitar player starts playing that James Brown lick for Shake Your Money Maker, right? Back to bed. And I'm like going,
these are like funk country guys.
I mean, I'm like going, well, I played that every day of my life. So you want me to play that? I'm not saying this stuff. I'm like, I just started playing time. And I remember going, well, this is a good way to break the ice because I know this stuff, you know. Right. And I remember looking over at Brian's foot, and it started off like this. Got higher. It got higher and higher and higher and higher. And he was looking down because Brian was a little bit more, he was really listening. He wasn't about the social thing yet. He wanted to make sure he liked what he heard. And we finished up that groove, and it was a great vibe in the room. And I remember then he looked at me and he goes, well, let's play this country shit real quick and get back to that. So I just remember that as being, a great memory. And then I departed, went back, and I was so tired. And so I laid back down in the hotel room, and you guys, stuck around or whatever. And the next thing I know is Derek George and Brian White crawled in bed with me and offered me the gig.
Well, yeah, that's the humor that these guys have. And the humor goes south from there.
It's really strange, though. I mean, it's like, how you doing? So what do you think about going on the road with us?
Well, they were comfortable enough with us that they knew that, it wasn't it's not like what it sounds. It was funny.
It created a little bit of like,
ew.
Wait, do I want this gig? Is this something we're going to do a lot? Is this the band meeting of my future? I mean,
and you got the gig.
Yeah, it was completely and totally.
And I remember Barron and I just going, yeah. We were like
it was very cool.
Proud.
It was very, very, very cool memory. But my life changed right there. Dude, there was like, dude, whatever you got, try to cover it, because we're heading out. We got 2 weeks of rehearsal, and then we're on the road.
Yeah.
And they gave me the calendar, and there were like 280 dates in the next year, and I'm like going, okay, not a lot of time for anything but playing drums. So
that was it. That was the beginning.
That started, yeah. And then I got hooked up with Yamaha and Sabian cymbals, Yamaha drums, Remo
So these
drum
are
heads.
Endorsements that come with being able to get a big tour like that. So Yamaha drums, like the ones behind you.
Yep.
Sabian cymbals, sticks, I suppose, and heads. And
I
all.
had a really interesting stick company. They were made out of Kevlar, called Mainline. They've gone under since, but it was really a cool product.
So you're on the road doing arenas,
Right.
With Leanne Rimes and Brian.
My first show was here
at the Target
Center.
Yeah, I was
New
there.
Year's Eve.
I was there.
My mom in the front row going,
how great is that? See, Mom, I told you I could do this, Mom. Yeah, that's incredible. So how many years did you end up staying with Brian?
I was with him for about 14 years.
How did that relationship morph throughout the years?
I was drummer. He had another drummer that was quite country, but didn't have that 2 and 4 heavy groove that he wanted. So
great drummer too, though.
Yeah, Monty Booker. Yep. Monty, just a sweetheart of a guy. You figured there'd be tension, but there's 2 drummers on stage, and he opened his arms. He just said, this is what I'm playing here, and this is what he wants, and Monty knew, and he said to me, he goes, "You're the reason I have a job, because you're open to this. Because all you'd have to say is, I don't want to work with another drummer, and they would just have you take care of it." And I'm like, right. I'm not going to do that. Yeah. I love the fact that we have 2 drummers. So I went, well, while he's playing by himself, I'll get a percussion rig, and I called LP, hooked up with them as an endorser, and I've got congas. I had played percussion on sessions a lot, so I just practiced a lot and got my hand drum stuff down, and so I had the hugest rig known to man, a full drum set, and rack system, and then I would off to the other side would be all a full percussion rig. So I'd stand up to play that, right. Sit down to play my drum set. So that's one of the evolutions. But after a while, things started to change, and the organization, the guy that was the tour manager, Brinson Strickland, who is just one of the most stand-up kind of guys, and fun to be around.
Yes,
but
he is.
Business is taken care of. I respected that so much about him, and still do. He's a manager. He's still currently managing, artists and doing general managing, like Clint Black, I think, is one of his clients, and so he had moved on to that category, and quite honestly, he had doubled up. He was playing guitar, second guitar, and singing backgrounds and tour managing. So I'm kind of looking at this whole, process in Nashville like, well, you can do more than one thing.
Right.
So I kind of went, well, I guess I would be interested in something like that. And Brian came to me because I was always covering for little things on Brinson's schedule. If he had something, I would be the next guy to take Brian and represent and stand, and kind of, hang on a second. Okay, next. You start with the meet and greets. Right. If you handle the social element in the meet and greets, then they, you kind of graduate from that. Now you're talking, okay, well, you go do settlement or whatever like that. These things started to become really natural to me. It's like, well, I'd rather be doing this stuff than sitting in the hotel room. That killed me. But, not to segue, but I mean, that's what it's about, is like, what do you do with this free time? Mm-hmm. I decided to exercise. I decided to, really get in shape. And Brian and I bonded on that. So I introduced him to...
To what?
Running.
Okay.
I mean, I just said, look, you got to get out and work your lungs and things like that. He had started to have, a couple of the issues, where he felt like he wasn't, able to support as much. And I'm like, it's oxygen, man. It's about the ability to, have your lungs powerful and your diaphragm and everything like that. And you use that when you run. So we would go on some of the greatest runs. I mean, it was like, he's like, man, this is, spiritual. And I'm like,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So we would work out and, do mini workouts. And there's a great story
Yeah.
Brian. Sorry, Brian.
No, he's not, Brian.
So Brian made me promise that we were going to work out tomorrow. So you're looking at tomorrow. Tomorrow's like, doesn't cost you anything, man.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll do it tomorrow. So I get up and I'm like, all right, bro, I got the runner coming at 10 o'clock and we're out of here. We'll come back, do sound check, grab lunch, and that. And he's like, and he was sitting in the front lounge with a little blankie in his underwear, because we all sleep on the bus. We get up, and Brian liked to sleep in his tighty whities.
Right.
So
As do a lot of us, by the way.
and I'm so sorry. There's a little tasteless element about this story. Just
Excellent.
So he looked at me and went, nah, I'm not. Forget it. And I had arranged a runner. These people had gone out of their way to get somebody's sister to take us to the,
Right.
You know, we gave them tickets to the show to get into this health club. Man, he kept saying no and watching, kind of looking up at the TV, fresh out of bed, kind of maybe not quite ready to have a conversation about it. So I'm like going, we're going. He's like, there's nothing you can do to get me up. I had a little bit of an indigestion.
Did you?
I wasn't.
What happened?
Wasn't feeling
You weren't feeling good?
really well.
Uh-oh. What happened?
It was like perfect timing. Yeah. So I'm standing there in the front lounge, and I went, really? And all of a sudden I felt better.
Oh, you released some sort of noxious gas.
I'm so
bomb?
sorry. This is tasteless and
it's
but
wonderful. Part of who we are.
And Brian was like, got up,
motivation.
got up, threw the covers off. I blocked him from going back in the back of the bus.
Right.
So all he had was like 4 feet to the front of the driver's area, and he could not get away from what was in the room.
Yes.
So he ran off the bus.
In his tidy
In
whities.
his tidy whities.
Oh.
And there were about 30 fans just hoping, praying for an opportunity to see or meet Brian White. And they got their wish, but a little bit more.
How?
And then
Was this before YouTube or social media?
Yeah, but luckily we were not yet on that train. But that is one of the funniest things that I've ever seen. And needless to say, we worked out that day.
I bet you did.
Yeah, we did.
And that was the start of things to come, because you knew you were the motivator in one way or another. So your relationship with Brian changed over the years from drummer
to tour manager. Yep.
To confidant.
Right.
To brother.
Yeah.
You guys really, over those 15 years, went through that whole thing.
I've never seen somebody really care that much about somebody they didn't know because of the way that the relationship progressed. He was instantly like a caring, like, well, how do you feel? Are you comfortable? I mean, this is the artist. This isn't a manager. This isn't a go-to.
That's who Brian is.
Well, and he told me, he said, I don't know anybody else that would have got on a plane to come to Nashville to try out for something like this from L.A., on just one phone call. And he immediately opened his heart to me. And I learned that, to when I find people like that in my life, I hang on to them. I just do. So I do everything I can to keep them in my life.
So 15 years go by. The gig ends.
Right.
You move back to L.A.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening in your career at that point? Is this when you are done with a long-standing gig like that? What's the process to letting people know, hey, I moved back? What's that all about? It
kind of, luckily for me, it was a natural, like, I'm back in town. The same guys I was working with before had either grown up or become more dominant, because when you're a fledgling, you hang out with other fledglings, and then they progress, and all of a sudden, hey, I've progressed with not even really being part of it. And I was able to work a lot with Chris Abraham again. He started what would be a library type of a studio situation where we would do music and it would sit and be able to be accessed and used for industrial films, cinema, any and all uses.
Another part of the music business
Right.
where you make some money.
Yeah. So most of my work was recording. I started then producing. I had people calling me and saying, look, I put a studio in the new place that I had, and I started really going to work on Pro Tools.
I remember that. Yeah.
I got my feet wet. I mean, one of the hugest influences for me and motivators in my life is your brother Ricky.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and meeting him here when I was a kid, and then all of a sudden I get a chance to work with him and play with him, and he had come out and was staying with me during rehearsal times for different acts like Stevie Nicks and different things that he was doing. So I was just learning Pro Tools, and I'd worked a deal with a friend of mine that's like, look, I'll produce and play on your record for $0 if you get me the gear I need to do it. So I started, I got we went and got a G4 Mac and a Pro Tools Digi 001 rig, and I had Yamaha had provided me with a 01V. It's the nice little board. So I was tracking drums and doing this record, and then Ricky came out, and I'm like, I was just working on grooves all the time, and you didn't always need to say, hey, let's work for work to get done with our group.
Right.
We'd be kind of kicking something around, and all of a sudden Ricky would be sitting on the couch and I've been working with drum grooves, and it was called Acid. You remember the program Acid? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I'd develop it and change it a little bit. And Ricky would walk in and go, you ready? And I'd have the keyboard up, and he'd go, wow, he'd come up with these little lines. And I just started adding people and adding players. Yeah. And he came to me after that, and he said, you're producing my record.
See? He dubbed you a producer. He did for me.
I just went, okay, that's not scary at all. When you have somebody you idolize say, hey, you're in charge of something that's really important. And I mean, I wasn't going to drop that ball. But
you stepped up.
Yeah.
That was a little motivation as well.
Yeah.
He gave you ownership in that, and he did the same for me. And you had two choices. You could either said, no, that's not for me. But your personality is such where you was like, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah. Well, come on. If you're looking for opportunity and you fumble and fall when it's handed to you,
right.
I mean, you better be ready. You better have your gloves on and pine tar on your hands. Make sure you're not going to drop what's given to you, man.
Right. So now you're producing records, starting with my brothers and this gentleman who gave you the gear. Mm-hmm. Through that, weren't you working as well? Didn't Ricky introduce you to some folks in the David Sanborn camp?
Yes. Okay. And that's the greatest thing is we ended up, doing some stuff together, a band called the Side Guys.
Yeah.
Ricky was involved in that, and I had played because I was just a very a student. I loved getting handed complex issues and coming through and making it and smoothing, and big problems were kind of my specialty. So I had gotten a call from Ricky, and he said, look, we need a drummer on a Sanborn thing, and it happened to be at Fenway, and we really don't have the opportunity to rehearse. So you're going to have to go to school on this. Are you up for it? And I'm like, I'm half prepared. I've been listening to David Sanborn my whole life and dreaming about it. So absolutely. So he gave me that opportunity, and I went in, and I remember you guys going, hey, let's go hang by the pool. I'm like, sorry, I got to go play this stuff again. Mm-hmm. So it was downstairs in your basement one time when I was getting ready to go out, and actually you had that drum set set up, and I was like, okay, well. But I did that, and in doing so was able to impress some people. The show went off extremely well.
Right.
Richard Patterson, another guy I owe a huge debt of gratitude, took notice that, hey, this guy came, he had his stuff together. And that's the most important thing you can do is don't misrepresent your talent by unpreparedness. It's like,
right.
Look, be over prepared, and then walk in.
That makes the hang better, doesn't it?
Oh my God, then you're relaxed because there will be a curveball. You didn't get some piece of information.
Right.
So, save your brain for that, not just barely hanging on. I'm going to do the least amount of work thing. So when I did the Sanborn thing, then Richard Patterson called me and said, hey, we need somebody to do the Boz Scaggs gig. Can you go to school on that? There's not going to be a rehearsal.
Oh, man.
And I walked in, and you know who was on that gig? Greg, Phil, and Gaines.
Yeah.
Drew Zing, Richard, who I respected greatly. Just a cast of characters, not to mention Boz is looking at you, and you're sitting in Jeff Porcaro's chair.
Yeah.
Drummers, hello.
Yeah.
That's a moment.
Right. These are the kind of things that you came back to LA for, and these are the things that were happening. You met a girl. You ended up getting married to Galen, right? I'm fast forwarding because we're almost up on our hour already.
Okay.
When did you take an uproot from LA and go to Las Vegas?
Well, interesting story. I had cultivated that studio scenario. I found a perfect place in LA to have a studio, my workout room. I was close enough to the beach. It was in the Redondo Beach area.
I loved that place.
Yeah, I met my wife. I was living there with Jamie, and he moved out, and I met my wife, and she moved in. We got married. She got pregnant, and she was about 6 or so months pregnant. And it was a moment where we said, this floor could use a little bit of love. We're going to have a baby crawling on it, and it would be really much better for it to be a ceramic, nice-looking floor. And I had made arrangements with the landlord before that to put a fence up so we could have our little hot tub in the backyard. And he came over and he said, you do good work. I said, well, I learned a lot about this stuff from my past, and I've done it before. And he's like, wow, anything you need to do, let me know. Because I'd put it up, and he actually took the material cost off the rent. Wow. So it was a 50-50 kind of deal. And I specialized in charming people in that way. It's like, hey, well, if I do this, would you do that? So I called him, and my wife is sitting right there from me to you away. And I said, hey, Mike, I just wondered if you would mind working out a deal on this floor. I'd love to lay down some nice ceramic tile. I got a baby coming and everything. He goes, yeah, I've been meaning to call you. I'm going to bulldoze that house and put 3 condominiums on it. So you got 30 days. And my wife is right there with a belly, right? And I'm going, so is that a no on the tile? So what happened is I hung up the phone, started this conversation, and held her together for about, 3 days.
Yeah.
And I called my friend Paul Peterson, who, for whatever reason, you just would always just have like, well, you should move to Vegas.
I did say that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Sorry about
And,
that. Actually, no, I'm not sorry because it worked out good.
And I said, we were having trouble looking at rental places, and the housing market was just ridiculously high. It was the top
in
of the
LA.
market. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everywhere. But, in LA especially. And so it was like, well, look, we're not going to be able to stay here, find what we need. And I was the tour manager for Brian White at the time, living in LA. Mm-hmm. I was able to do that from there, tour manager, drummer.
Right.
So I just needed an airport. And your logic made sense. It was like, go to a place where there's other work. So when Brian's not working, you can branch over into the Vegas scene. And
right.
So it's exactly what I did. I overpaid by Vegas standards, and the values did go down, but I was in Las Vegas.
Right.
And a tour manager going to the airport, flying out, meeting everybody at the venue, and taking care of business and flying home. So it worked out great. And then that progressed. I don't know if you want me to continue on that line.
Yeah.
But,
I want to know how your relationship with the Osmonds began. That's what I want to know.
Well, in Las Vegas, another person I'd say that was very key and I owe a great deal of gratitude to is Jerry Lopez. Mm-hmm. Jerry is far and away one of the most talented people I've ever seen or heard in my life. And just soulful to no end as a human being and as a musician. So I was lucky enough to introduce myself to him in this process. We bought a house. We're living there. I said, hey, I'm available for local work. And he said, well, have you ever done any shows? And I said, no. I'm really not a show drummer, but I am, I'm a student. I love to learn. And if you got a book or two, throw them at me. I mean, I'm not asking you for the gig. Just throw me what you would throw a guy if he was going to be the next guy in your roster. So he threw me a couple books, and I went home and I learned them. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting at home with knowledge of these shows, and sooner or later, the need came up to go and cover a show called Hats. I think it was, I might get this wrong, but I think it was Carole King had written all the music for this show called Hats. So I'm in this show thing, and I'm subbing for Gabriel Falcone, the drummer that was on something else that night, and Jerry was on the gig, and he just put his hand out, and he said, man, if that's what I can expect, you're in. So I didn't know what that meant, but that was great. And I'm doing my thing, and all of a sudden I get a phone call. And he said, look, I've got the ability to put you, in front of some people here that there's a show coming into town. I can't talk about who it is yet, but they've got some specific needs. And I'm wondering how you fit in. Do you have any knowledge of Pro Tools? And I'm like, I produce records. Okay. Do you read? And I'm like, yeah, I read well. Well, that's obvious because I did Hats, and he said, I just didn't know, how you had managed that gig. And I said, well, the charts were right there. I was able to read those. And so he said, well, I'm only going to submit 2 people, you and another guy, but I'm going to put an asterisk by your name because they need somebody that, it's going to be on stage. You're up front. You're not in a pit band. So it could be a situation where they take my musical recommendation and you get picked by your photo. Wow. You know what I mean? So I got chosen out of the stack of 2 to be in the Donnie Marie show.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. And I didn't have to play a note because that's where Jerry's recommendation comes in. Mm-hmm. They just go, okay, if you say so, there it is. And I need to thank him.
Yeah.
Because that was 12 years of work.
12 years with the Osmonds.
With the Osmonds at the Flamingo.
5 days a week. 5
nights a week. And health insurance, ladies and gentlemen, something musicians don't know how to spell or don't know what it is.
Right.
So thank God for the Musicians Union for being involved in that. And, they work pretty hard out there. Keith and everybody over at the Musicians Union. So trying to take care of their players.
So you're doing this show with the Osmonds, but while you're doing this show, you're also being wise with some of the choices that you're making financially. You have your background, like we said, in houses and redoing houses.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Renovating is the word I was looking for, but it wasn't coming to my little brain here. You started doing that in Vegas, is that right? So you've got a side business. There's your side hustle. Right.
What happened is that, there was the market recessed, and I was looking at, I owed twice as much of my house that was currently worth. And something about, losing a battle makes me that much more aggressive. If I'm losing at something, I try to turn it around somewhere or another. It's like, okay, I bought one at the top. How about if I buy one at the bottom?
Right.
How about if I, buy a couple at the bottom? So I generated as much income as I could, bought houses that were really needed a lot of love. And I ended up, stacking one on top of the other and then taking the rental income and then getting the next one and getting the next one to where I had 6 houses,
But you put your heart and soul and sweat equity into these plays. These aren't turn the key and it's just,
no.
This is, ooh.
No,
you walk in and go, oh, boy.
The thing to think in terms of the world savvy is if you've got a good thing, then that's it. No, if you got a good thing, build on the good thing, make a great thing. So I had 5 nights a week. I didn't have to sweat it. I didn't have to be there till 7:30 at night. I walk in. I got 30 minutes of prep time. Go put my clothes on. I'm done at 9. You know what I mean? So it catered to a lot of opportunity for me to have my days. And my days were productive in either in recording studio or I'd go and I'd work on a property. And, I got a baby at this point. I'm thinking about the future. I'm thinking about, what happens when this gig ends?
Right.
Being
prepared for that. So smart. And I think that's a great word for all those musicians out there. It's okay to have other things that you're doing to generate one good career. And that's what's so fascinating about you. Let's move fast forward into the last couple of years with the Donnie and Marie show. You started writing some dialogue.
Yeah.
In the very end, you ended up you were the, not creative director, or were you, musical director for Marie.
Right.
And you were advancing shows, tour managing.
Production manager.
Production manager. That's the title I was looking for. And that is pretty involved.
Basically, when I got the gig with Donnie and Marie, Donnie walked right over to me, kind of gave me a once over, had a short conversation, and he handed me the computer. And I said, "What's this?" He goes, "You're going to be running the show." And I kind of looked over at the musical director, and I'm like, is this cool with you? I mean, and he actually was fine with it because it's a big responsibility. Right. And let's face it, drummers, we start and stop a lot of shows. So it's a natural progression to think, well, if I'm counting it off, I'm counting it off by hitting a button. I think it is, like I said, natural progression of thinking.
And this button's running lighting, camera angles.
Everything was chained to the computer system.
Right.
So we were running at that time Cubase, and then the SMPTE code was triggering other things. So it was a big responsibility, but I didn't hesitate. I just went, okay. What I didn't know is that it was going to put me in more close contact with Donnie and Marie. I'd have to sit with them and do timing, as far as like starting and stuff like that, what the keywords were, you know what I mean? I'd have to know the dialogue of the show. I had to know the pacing of the show. I'd have to know, okay, is this a pregnant pause? Do you want a fall off? Are we going on applause? Are we going on timing? Are we going on, a spot on the stage? So I started to mass that knowledge and the character of each of those artists. So as I did that, I was in their, closer good graces. There was friendships that cultivated with Donnie but with her and Marie's manager, and it ended up being one of those things where I knew more about the show than anybody else on that stage, and sometimes even more than the musical director, because I was in a meeting based on my job,
right?
So I became that go-to guy, and if there was a problem, I was called in. You know what I mean? Because I would possibly have a solution. I sat there. I knew the cockpit. I knew what was wrong. I knew what went on, and I had ideas on how to fix it. And that's basically production 101.
So you were given the responsibility of production manager for Marie's things. That's kind of where you left off in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
You decide to move home. Now, granted, we're leaving out so many cool things that you and I were able to do together, still being brothers, and me watching you. First of all, my relationship with Donnie and Marie was so fun for me earlier in the 90s, and then I got to watch you do it and hang out with those guys the last 15 years. But then you introduced me to Debbie Gibson. You and I travel the world, go diving, hanging out. We traveled to Australia with St. Paul and the Minneapolis Funk All-Stars. But you ultimately come home, and the phone, you've been here a month and a half. The phone doesn't stop ringing, does it?
It doesn't. And to mention Debbie, you gotta just say what a wonderful experience working with her.
Our little sister.
Yeah, she
right?
is. There's massive love,
and
it's not restricted to my heart. I think of her, and it's just my heart's connected to how wonderful of a person and how talented she really is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
she
sits down at a piano, and you're like going, well, there's a whole nother career there if you want it.
Right.
I mean. But being her musical director and, being involved with that and her energy and just it was one of the highlights, and I owe her so much. Still to this day, we just get on the phone and laugh. And even if we don't have business, it's like, what's going on?
We called her from the
baseball game
the other day, and she was howling. We just had I think we sent her funny pictures,
Yeah.
all that.
By the way, some of those are very disturbing images.
Thank you very much, Joe. I'm quite happy with that.
Likes his Snapchat.
Well, first of all, Snapchat. Don't let me have Snapchat. I have to say, having you back home for me, selfishly, is so cool because there's so few people that I want to be around. And, time is so precious. And the people that you choose to share that time with, that is, those people are so important to you. And I love having you home. You're my brother. And now we can get back on the workout regimen we have 3 more minutes on this broadcast. We better talk a little bit about what we've been doing in the last 20 years of our relationship in regards to workout and what we do on the road. And how does being in shape relate to what you do as a drummer and as a way to keep your head clear?
Oh, it's massive, the place that it occupies for me. My connection to my instrument, my connection to the community that I'm visiting. I mean, don't go sit in a hotel and wait for the show. That means you've seen a dumpster, whatever color seats there are in the arena, and catering. And that's what. So, what did you think of Syracuse? Blue seats.
Right. Bad catering.
Bad catering. And no, I'm not saying that for real. But I mean, no, the dumpster, was about a 4. I mean, it wasn't real ripe.
Right.
So don't do that to yourself. Connect. I mean, especially when you're somewhere you've never been. You show up and you have a story. I mean, I remember people coming up to me and enlightening themselves by asking me what I did.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're the one that people go, so what did you see? And I'm be like, oh, there's a great pastry shop right down here about a mile and a half. You'll see a park, and you take a left, and there's a running trail. If you follow that, you come to a crosswalk, go over that, and the pastry shop, man, to die for. And there's a little area there. You're telling people about places they'll never see unless they leave their room.
Right.
And being healthy, I mean, there's 100 million reasons to be healthy. But, I mean, if you're going to be on the road and you're going to be performing, don't be up there looking like you're going to die because you didn't do anything but sit there and wait for the show, and now you're sweating out. And stay away from, too much sauce or too much of this and that.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever you do. But do what's necessary to get back to at least flatline, If you take it down, take it up. And running was always take it up, give my body a boost.
Right.
And have an experience. This is not something that you're going to be going, I want to go back there. I mean, when you're 75 years old, and it's not going to feel the same. You're not going to be able to run. You're not going to be able to do these things.
Yeah.
Do them now when you can.
Right.
That's the deal. That's just it.
Brother man, your career is so fascinating to me and so inspiring. I'm sure to all of my listeners, it's never just one thing that we do. We put them all together to make one good one. And you are one of the funniest I've ever met in my life. And it's just so great that you're back home. And thank you for taking an hour out of your
life. This is a pleasure. I don't know that I'm a big star and you're going to get a lot of watchers out of this. You might have to offer free applesauce or something. get them to, some kind of a special offer. But I owe so much and feel so good about our friendship, our relationship. The not only opening doors, but opening your heart, your family, just being able to come over here and just walk in and feel home.
Yeah.
It's my...
You are, bro. You are family.
It's my other home and my other family, and I wouldn't change it for the world. It's the best thing about being home again is being able to just drop by. Like the other day, I said, "Hey, what are you doing?
Yep.
Come on over." So he's sitting at the pool, and I just walked in and sat down, and I went, I think this is going to work.
Yeah. This is the guy who, my daughter just bought a house 2 miles from here. This is the guy that gets a call from my daughter to try to explain to her how to mud the cracks in her ceiling. He said, "I'm coming over right now." And this guy, I didn't even see the house yet. You actually physically saw my daughter's house before I did, but that's who this guy is.
Well,
I love you. Thank you for being on episode 45. And, of course, I'm coming over to the good camera to say, ladies and gentlemen, that is episode 45.
It's on my lap. It's on my lap.
Have a good one. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Ow! Music on the Run was hosted by yours truly, St. Paul Peterson. Edited and produced by my buddy, Davide Raso. Artist relations by Owen Sartori. Video editing by Tanner Montague. And a very special thanks to the people who financially support this podcast. And remember, brotherhood is for life.